A little plant and it's doing great. You break off a piece and you propagate. You make another plant. Ooh yeah, a baby brother plant.
Do you want to get more out of your tomatoes?
I would wager a guess that your tomatoes are looking pretty wild like this.
Now, if you want to increase your harvest, we're going to have to prune these things back pretty heavily. And these pruning methods are for indeterminate style tomatoes. As this style of tomato is pretty much a vine, it will keep growing and growing and growing, and the growth points are from these suckers. Now, what's a sucker? A sucker is an additional stem that is found at a 45-degree angle between a leaf branch and the main stem. If you want to do no other pruning to this plant, at least remove the suckers to help your plant produce bigger fruit. At the bottom of your plant, you want to remove at least the first foot of foliage, as the sun isn't touching these leaves anyways.
Now at first it seems really scary, and I'm a pretty aggressive pruner, but doing this improves the airflow. It takes away some of those structures that plant is working to support, and then we'll put it into the fruit. Trust me.
And make sure to like and follow for more tips.
I just accidentally propagated a rose bush, so I was being really quirky. I started just putting my old dead roses in a pot. I just thought, oh yeah, how fun is that? That's new growth.
The main thing that people forget when growing tomatoes is that they need friends. If tomatoes are grown by themselves, they're always prone to disease, insect problems, and fungus. So let me introduce you to a few of the friends of my tomato plants. We have Mexican sunflower, both for pollination, but also fixing nitrogen in the soil. When these flowers die off, you can chop and drop them back into the soil. We have calendula and cosmos for pollination. We have 3 different types of clover, because that not only pollinates, but it also repairs atmospheric nitrogen. Then my favorite, the nasturtium. Nasturtiums do 2 things. 1, they're going to attract the braconid wasp that's going to destroy those tomato hornworms. But 2, it's an insect trap for aphids. So when the aphids cover the nasturtium, chop it off, feed it to the chickens. Dill, basil, and other herbs also work great. So give your tomatoes some friends and watch the difference in how they produce for you.
Here's some more tomato tips. I am a firm believer in companion planting, and let me tell you why. Whenever I plant tomatoes, I also plant basil beside them. And basil acts as a deterrent for those damn hornworms. Basil and tomato planted next to each other play very well. They are said to actually enhance each other's flavor. When you plant tomatoes, peppers, squash, and basil all together, they thrive tremendously. This earth was designed for everything to kind of work in a circle. So the more that you effectively plant things next to each other that thrive off of each other, your garden becomes its own little ecosystem, and it kind of takes care of each other. I also plant lettuce in the same bed as those other 4. And why? The lettuce works as a great ground cover. The tomatoes shade the lettuce so you can grow them later in the year when it's hotter. Not only is that lettuce going to be ground cover, it's going to help protect the roots of your tomato plants and hold in more moisture.
My mom set out this giant tub of tomatoes. I feel like a little ghoul. I just want to eat them all. This one looks like a little gourd.
Follow this weird trick to grow thousands of tomatoes this year. First, we're gonna dig a really deep hole. Next, we're gonna crack an egg into it and smash up the shell. Yum. Then we're gonna get our tomato plant, and you're gonna break off all of the bottom branches and bury it very deep down into the hole. All of these little hairs will become roots, so this will have a very strong root system. Just kidding.
Here are a few things you can do with tomato suckers. First of all, what are these suckers? You're gonna see them branching out at a roughly 45-degree angle from a leaf and a leading stem. It might surprise you, but the first thing you can do is just leave it. I left every single sucker on this big chonkin tomato, and it's doing fine in this cage. But if you want to, you can give it that. If I put this in the soil or water, I will have a tomato that's genetically the same as this chonker. It can be a great way to clone a backup in case this tomato goes south. Here are a few things.
Do you know how to stake your tomatoes? Do you know the Let's get some free tomato plant. We are pruning and propagating this sucker right here. It's the branch that grows in the armpit of other branches. It's super helpful to the plant to remove this part of the plant, otherwise it will try and grow into a main shoot. So this is the best way to prune a tomato plant. If they wilt after a while, that's fine. Just put them in water. Trust the process. Within a week's time, you should have some really impressive root structures just begging to go into some dirt. It's always good to bury tomatoes deep in the ground as well, because every single little hair along the stem will turn into a new root structure. Give them a good gulp of water. Tomatoes like to be heavily watered, and we'll come back in a couple months and see what